Hello there and welcome back. If you saw the last video, you know that we've already done numbers 10 to 6 of my top 10 countries. So now, without any messing around, let's dive into 5 to 1. Number 5, Albania. I went to Albania last year and it will always be a special place to me. I was originally supposed to go in September 2022, but I had to cancel due to having a surgery. It was all a bit out of the blue and I was in a hospital bed having to cancel everything just 3 days before I was supposed to fly out. Even with everything rebooked for the following year, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do it, physically or mentally, but I'm so glad I did. It was a massive hurdle for me to get over, which is in part why it's so high on this list, but by far from the only reason. On a side note, the day I actually ended up flying out was the same day as King Charles III's coronation. I flew with BA and they actually provided us with free Wi-Fi so you could watch the coronation on the plane, which was fantastic. There I was on the plane watching this historic moment and he still hasn't got the crown on and we're coming in to land. I'm like, come on, hurry up. We land, I get through security, he still hasn't been crowned. I'm waiting to get picked up to get the hire car and finally he's crowned. I can put my phone away and crack on with my trip. I did some of the seaside towns which are getting more popular, such as Durrës, Vlorë and Samil, and don't get me wrong, they're great, but they're not really what I was there for. The countryside was my jam. Driving the Lagora Pass was my first glimpse of the true beauty of this country. High up in the mountains, the views are stunning and it's one of the most glorious drives I've ever done. I've read some things saying it can be treacherous, but maybe in the winter, I had no issues with the roads at all. Speaking of stunning drives, when I went to Gjirokastër, my word, the views were insane. I remember driving down the side of a mountain with everything just opening up into this wide valley. Luckily, the roads outside of Tirana are pretty quiet, so I was able to easily pull over and get some pictures. Not that they do the view justice. Gjirokastër itself is set into the mountainside of the valley and was probably my favourite city of the whole trip. The view looking out from my B&B, taking in the castle and the views from the castle itself were just, well, you can see from the pictures. It may have been cloudy and wet when I was there, but it didn't dampen things for me. I also took a detour to this hot spring with more mountain views. It was free, but you had to get changed in the trees. Oh well, all adds to the experience. Fortunately, the weather was better for my time in BRIT, the city of 1,000 windows. I had a few walks down the river, including one with an American that I met at dinner. That's one great thing about travelling solo, is not just interacting with the locals, but getting to meet people from all over. My favourite part of BRIT was the castle. Sat atop the hill, it's like its own village. You have the historic ruins, etc., but there are also numerous restaurants and some places to stay up there. Food highlights. The food highlights list from Albania is quite lengthy, so I'll get on with it. This is I'm going to butcher all of these words. Speketëmbësh, which is peppers stuffed with rice. Tavi koshi, lamb baked with yogurt and eggs. Gjufka me pule, which is like a chicken pasta dish, and I also had that with a side of fugazi, a feta-style cheese-based dish with peppers. This thing, I got it from a bakery. It was almost like smooth set polenta in texture with a crunchy top. I don't know what it is though, and even the Albanian guy that I work with can't tell me what it is. If you know, please tell me in the comments. I would love to know. Birek, a simple flaky pastry but delicious. This one was filled with spinach, but you can get it with lamb or cheese. And yes, there will be debate about where birek is actually from. My research says Turkey, but I've had birek in at least 4 different countries now, and it's fantastic everywhere I've had it. Tri leche cake. Do you really need me to translate? Lastly, a few regional things, specifically to the Gjirokastër city area. Shapkat, another thing filled with spinach, but this is closer to a pie made with corn flour. Çiftçi, fried rice balls. Not much to them, but my god they were good. The crunch from the outside, Served with some stuffed grape leaves called sarma. If you've been to Turkey, they're also known as dolma. Finally, there was oshaf, a dessert made from sheep's milk, flavoured with sugar, figs and cinnamon. I went to a restaurant specifically for this dessert, as where I'd eaten before didn't have it. I'd say it's like a posset in terms of consistency, and if you don't know what a posset is either, then Google is your friend. Right, that one was a bit longer than expected, but hey, I guess it's top 5 for a reason. Number 4, Brazil. I went to Brazil with a few mates for the 2014 Football World Cup, and wow, what an experience. Most of the time we were based in Rio. There was a fan park on the Copacabana which was incredible. Watching games on the big screen with a beer in your hand and the sand under your feet was such an amazing feeling. We saw a couple of games at the Maracanã, including the quarter-final between France and eventual winners Germany, while also seeing a game in Sao Paulo. Great nightlife there, by the way, although I was victim of a pickpocket after the game, which put a downer on the night. Here's me in Chinatown after going to the police station. Another game in Brasilia. The stadium there had the steepest stands I've ever experienced, and we were right at the back, so looking down was a bit like, I felt like you were going to just fall over at any time. Then there were 2 games in Belo Horizonte. Unfortunately, one of those games was England against Costa Rica, a 0-0 bore draw with nothing riding on it. Well, not for England, there wasn't. We were already out before kickoff. Not exactly what I'd hoped when seeing England at a World Cup. The other game in Belo was much, much better, seeing Brazil defeat Chile on penalties in the round of 16. That shirt I bought on the way to the game. Another highlight of this trip included doing a guided tour of a favela where I found out how great açaí is. This was the favela of Rocinha, the biggest one in Brazil. Basically its own town, a more sanitised experience than you would get from, I guess, a favela you class as standard if there is such a thing. In part, why they can do tours around it. They have their own infrastructure with banks, a school, hospitals, cable TV. I even saw a subway, as in, the fast food place, not a metro station. Rocinha has also been featured in some Hollywood films such as The Incredible Hulk from 2008 and Fast 5. One thing that will always stick with me about Brazil is playing football on the Copacabana beach. At the time I was playing 5-a-side football, but I'd been out injured for about 6 months. I said to the guys early on in the trip, look, we have to play football on this beach, it's iconic. So, we got to the last week and we still hadn't kicked a ball, so I bought a football off some random guy that was selling them on the beach, and we went and had a kick around. They have goals that are just there on the beach, so there's 4 of us having a kick about, and these 4 Colombian guys come up to us and say, hey, do you want a game? We're like, yeah, okay. We're having this match with these Colombian guys, and then more and more people start joining in. So it gets to about 11 aside on this small beach pitch, but it was incredible. There was people there from all over the world. My team won. So yeah, that will always be a treasured memory. Of course, there was some sightseeing, such as the Christ Redeemer, the Escadaria Celeron, the Cathedral of Brasilia, all great, and of course the scenery was unreal, but the football provides the bulk of the memories from this particular trip. Food highlights. As already mentioned, frozen açaí. Then there was barbecue, which was delicious, but I somehow managed to get no pictures of it. And some coconut milk. Why not? So yeah, just an incredible trip all round. So good that one of the guys I went with went back by himself 6 months later. Thankfully, we arrived home before the Brazil-Germany game. That one. The one that the Brazilians don't really like you talking about. Anyway, moving on. Number 3, the USA. I've been to the USA more times than any other country. 6 times in total. Granted, 3 of those were when I was growing up, so family holidays to Orlando, doing, the theme parks, Universal, Disney, all that kind of stuff. As an adult, I've been able to see much more of the natural beauty of it. Of course, I've seen cities such as New York, Philadelphia, Boston, Chicago, Atlanta, Nashville, Vegas, Salt Lake, to name a fair few, but I'll concentrate, for now at least, on the nature side of things. In chronological order, we'll start here with Mount Washington. Seeing this, as Americans would say, during fall, was beautiful, getting to see those vibrant autumn colours. The drive to the top, however, I did not enjoy. I still can't decide if I was grateful for being in the passenger seat or not. At the top, it was freezing, with probably the strongest winds I've ever experienced. Niagara Falls, incredible. I mean, just look at it. The sun was shining and the rainbows were the cherry on top of the cake. However, and I guess you could call this a spoiler hint, both countries 2 and 1 on this list have better waterfalls. Moving on now to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, looking out from the Clingman's Dome Observation Tower. And a few mentions of places from my most recent trip earlier this year. Antelope Island, Bryce Canyon, the Grand Canyon. I'm just skimming over these because I already have videos about them on my channel. It wouldn't be a trip to the States without taking in some sports. While I'm not a massive lover of most of their sports, I like that it's different, mostly to what I'm used to in the UK. It's much more inclusive for the crowd and just a great day out overall. I've seen American football in New Jersey, albeit a college game. Soccer, again in New Jersey, even though it was the New York Red Bulls. Baseball in Cincinnati. Basketball in Salt Lake City. And ice hockey in Phoenix. Also, the food options at US sporting events are insane when compared to here. Speaking of which, food highlights! Admittedly, a lot of American food is full of absolute rubbish and the portion sizes are way too big, but it tastes so good. If I included everything, we'd be here till tomorrow, so here are just some of the standouts from over the years. Lobster roll in Maine. The Ben & Jerry's factory in Vermont. Buffalo wings in Buffalo. Philly cheesesteak in Philadelphia, of course. Pastrami sandwich at Katz's Deli in New York. Oh yeah. Having KFC at the first ever KFC restaurant in Kentucky. Pancakes. Just pancakes in general. Burgers. Lots of burgers. Some bigger than others. And of course, barbecue food. Lots and lots of barbecue food. No matter which state you're in, you can find somewhere that does amazing barbecue. I'm hungry just looking at those pics. Right, on to number 2. Number 2, Argentina. Like with Brazil, I went to Argentina with a couple of mates, mainly to watch football. We went back in 2011 and spent 3 weeks travelling around the country watching Copa America games. We started here in Santa Fe with a game featuring the main man himself, Lionel Messi, as Argentina drew with Colombia. After that, there was a short stop in Rosario, Messi's hometown, before staying in Cordoba for a few nights, seeing 2 games, including Brazil versus Paraguay. Cordoba is a great night out. It's buzzing at night. Definitely one of my top 5 hangovers. After that, there was a night in Mendoza, before embarking on a 24-hour coach journey. We needed something to do, so why not stickers? To see the best waterfall I have ever seen in my life. And that, dear viewer, was Iguazu Falls. Seen in the Bond film Moonraker and Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it straddles past the border between Argentina and Brazil. The sheer scale of it is awesome. My pictures don't give you a true sense of just how big it is overall. You can see it from both the Argentinian side and the Brazilian side if you like, so this actually accounted for my first ever time in Brazil, even if it was only for one night. After that, it was down to Buenos Aires to finish the trip. The La Boca area was vibrant with its multicoloured buildings and traditional tango dancing. Back to the football, we saw 7 games in total. This one was in La Plata, about an hour's drive from Buenos Aires. It was Peru versus Uruguay, and as you can see, we were in with the Peruvian fans. They were just a lot of fun. The last game we saw was unexpected. On arriving in Argentina, the final was sold out. The locals had bought most of the tickets in anticipation of the hosts making the final. They didn't, losing on penalties to Uruguay in the quarterfinals. Because of this, we managed to pick up tickets for £100 each, which even back then was a steal for a major final. Uruguay faced Paraguay, with the game being held at River Plate's Estadio Más Monumental. Uruguay won 3-0, with 2 goals from Diego Forlan and 1 from Luis Suarez. It was a truly unforgettable day, and what a way to end a trip. Before revealing my number 1 country, it's time for the penultimate food highlights. Argentina is known for steak and wine, and to this day I've never tasted better beef anywhere else in the world. If I'm picking up a bottle of wine, it's almost always Malbec from Mendoza. I also can't talk about food from Argentina without mentioning dulce de leche. A type of caramel sauce, it's incredible. Go into any bakery in Argentina, pick something at random, and there's pretty much a 50% chance it's gonna have dulce de leche in or on it. So, that's it. We're down to the last one. Somewhere cold, sparsely populated, lots of sheep, and the most stunning natural beauty I've ever seen. Any ideas? My number one country so far is, drum roll please, number 1, Iceland. I went to Iceland with a mate in October 2021. This was still when you had to do COVID tests before getting on a flight and prove that you didn't have COVID when you got to your destination as well. I chose Iceland as my first post-COVID trip as I thought with travelling starting to open up again, most people are going to want to go somewhere warm. So to avoid the rush of tourists, I'll go somewhere that's the complete opposite. And what a choice. I can see why Iceland has been used to portray alien planets in many films and TV shows. It truly is otherworldly. Driving on the one main road outside of Reykjavik, a lot of the time you have mountains on one side and the sea to the other side. The perfect place for a road trip. There are waterfalls everywhere, so if you love waterfalls then Iceland is the one for you. Some of my favourites included Seljalandsfoss, Skogafoss, Svartifoss, and Godafoss. Although, as I alluded to in the Argentina bit, none of them individually top Iguazu Falls. You have black sand beaches such as the one at Vik, with its colour coming from the lava sediments. Glacier pools such as Jökulsárlón with its diamond beach, so cool because of the fragments of crystal clear ice scattered everywhere. If you like glaciers, then you're in luck because there's loads. There I am, standing on one. The glacier caves are out of this world. A bit scary being inside, but also breathtaking. Just trying to take it all in and register what I was seeing was just blah, 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 blah. The one shown here was, as our B&B described it, a secret cave. There are no tours, you just go by yourself, but you have to hike for over half an hour to get to it. Me and my mate Alex had it all to ourselves. The silence was deafening, save for the odd bit of ice falling into the glacier pool. Obviously, you can't talk about Iceland without mentioning volcanoes. The standout was Fagradalsfjall. It has started erupting earlier that year in March, but by this time the lava had cooled so you could walk on it, which was unbelievably cool and terrifying at the same time. I did bring a very small chunk of the lava home with me as a souvenir. We snorkeled in Thingvellir National Park in the Silfra Fissure. You might think it's crazy to snorkel in Iceland, especially in late October, and while it was pretty cold, the water was crystal clear, and in this fissure you're swimming between two tectonic plates, dividing the Eurasian and North American continents. How cool is that? We did also go to the Blue Lagoon. I know, touristy, but it was incredibly relaxing. Neither of us wanted to leave. I didn't take my phone in, so no pickies, I'm afraid. Time for the last food highlights. Being an island, there's a lot of fish, but as mentioned, there's a lot of sheep, so lamb is the go-to meat in Iceland. So, a fair amount of lamb, but I also tried whale, puffin, reindeer. I know. I'm sorry. Oh, and also an Icelandic-style hot dog. The food was lovely, but if I was just ranking Iceland on food alone, it wouldn't even be in the top 10. But the scenery. Wow. I just can't get over how amazing it was. My mate Alex, who I went with, he said on our return that he thought he'd done Iceland too early into his travelling. That, in terms of natural beauty, he'd seen the peak and that it had lessened anywhere else he might go by comparison. Now, that is a bold statement, and as much as I know there are places that I and he have yet to discover, that is a huge impression to leave on someone. So, that's it. We've come to the end. That's my top 10. What do you think of my rankings? Do you have any suggestions for somewhere you think I should go that I've not been that you think would go straight into the top 10? Also, I'd love to know what your top 10 or top 5 is. Let me know in the comments below. That's it for another one. Have a good one, and I'll catch you next time.